Hello, Monarchs. Welcome to the first video for lesson 6.3, day 2. Today we are again solving linear equations or linear systems by linear combinations. So we've done graphing, we've done substitution. Now we have combination or combinations, okay? So on Friday, you should have learned with Miss Salazar that when we have two linear equations just like this, right? When we have two linear equations just like that, we can combine them, so basically add them together to solve for one of our variables, right? But we know that in order to do that, we have to have opposites, and if we don't have opposites, we have to make opposites, okay? So on Friday, the only time we had to make opposites was multiplying by -1 to change everything's sign. Today we're going to have to multiply by a negative and usually actually a number to make opposites, and I'll explain how to do that, okay? So again, we are doing linear combinations, okay, just like Friday. And our rules are just like before. So if we add and get a 0, we are happy, okay? If we add and get a 0, we're happy. If not, we make opposites. We're still happy. We're still happy because we're doing math, and it's hard to be not happy when you're doing math. But we do have to do an extra step, which is to make an opposites, okay? So now it's what if you don't get a 0? So if you don't get a 0, then we have to multiply by something else, okay? So what if we don't get a 0? And I will show you guys exactly what we need to do when we don't get a 0, okay? So right now, if I was to add these two equations together, I'm just going to act like I am, right? I would do 7x plus 5x, that would be 12x. Y plus 2y would be 3y, and 2 plus 4 would be 6. I don't get a 0 anywhere, right? So then I'd be like, oh, well, I need to multiply one of them by -1. So let's say I multiply this top one by -1 here. If I multiplied that by -1, everything would change signs. So this would just be -y plus 2y, which would get you a positive 1y, which still is not a 0, right? So even if we multiplied this by -1, we still would not get a 0, right? So when we add the two equations together, do you get a 0? No. So we have to make opposites, okay? So we have to make opposites. But we cannot make opposites by simply multiplying by a -1, right? We can't do that because that would not make opposites. So we have to make sure that we have opposites on the top from the bottom. So the easiest way that I think we can do that is, see this y is by itself? That means we can multiply it by anything and it will become that, right? So we want this 2y, we want the opposite of that. So let's look at this 2y, and we need to think about, what do I need to multiply this by to get the opposite of this 2y, right? And the answer would first be a negative, right? So I can't, I'm going to know I'm going to multiply by a negative because this is a positive and I want it to be the opposite, right? So I know I'm going to multiply by a negative, and I know that this is a 2. So I'm actually going to multiply everything in the top equation by -2. Okay, and that will make me have opposite. So I'm multiplying everything by -2, and you will see what that does. Okay, so do you get a 0? No. So we make opposites, multiply the first equation by -2, and then we add the equations together. Okay, and we'll see why right here. So when I multiply everything by -2, I get -2 times 7x. That's -14x. Okay, and then -2 times y is -2y, okay? And then 2 times -2 is -4, all right? So now after I multiplied by -2, that's what I get. I'm gonna go ahead and bring this equation right underneath it so we can add them together, okay? So now I still have 5x plus 2y equals 4, okay? And as you can see, we now have opposites, right? These are now opposites. So I'll circle them in red to show that we now have opposites, okay? Those are my two opposites, and I got those opposites by multiplying this top equation by -2, okay? So now we just add them together like we normally would. So I do -14 plus 5. That is a -9x. -2y plus 2y is 0, so those cancel out. That equals -4 plus 4 is 0. So I would divide both sides by -9 to get rid of that -9. So I'm going to divide by -9, divide by -9. Those cancel out. I get 1x or x. X equals 0, okay? So I know my x is going to be 0. So do you get a 0? Yes, right? And then we solve for x. My x is 0. Then I'm going to plug in my x to find my y, okay? So I'm going to use this top equation again, and I'm going to do 7 And now comes my x. So I'm going to plug in this 0 for my x, right? So I'm going to plug in a 0 plus y equals 2, okay? 7 times 0 is 0. Those cancel out. So we just bring this down and we get y equals 2. And that checks out. So we would put our y is 2, okay? So when we can't make opposites, we have to figure out what number we have to multiply in order to make opposites, all right? So stay tuned for lesson 6.3, day 2, video 2. It'll be the next